Dennis Edwards, the change that no one knew was needed. Dennis, he helped elevate a group that was already legendary to an icon status. With his hand in bringing Motown not one, but 2 Grammys, Dennis helped bring the group from a babyface group to more of a modern group that can give you a whole lot of soul. Now, with that being said, let's cue that intro. Dennis will make his album debut with the group on the album Live at the Copa, which was a live concert that was made into an album. Now, all of these songs that was sung was done before his time with the group. In 1968, the group will record albums with the Supremes, and these albums was called Diana Ross and the Supremes Join the Temptations, that reached number 2 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and number 1 on the top R&B album charts, also going certified gold. And TCB, that reached number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and number 1 on the top R&B album charts, as well as going certified gold. Now, with Dennis joining the group, he would change the whole sound. Now, we all can agree that David and Dennis' voices are way different, but Dennis' voice isn't bad. It's actually good. It's just strong. This will lead to Norman Whitfield changing the sound of the group. He felt that the group's sound needed something new, but great. So he would create a funk sound for the group, and he would be inspired by Sly and the Family Stone and the Funkadelics. Now, Dennis, he came from a religious family, growing up in the church, and his father, Dennis Edwards Sr., was a preacher. So Dennis, he had a strong preacher singing voice. The Temptations would debut this new sound with a song called Cloud 9. This song became the biggest hit from the group, and this song will ultimately reach number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 2 on the R&B charts. The song had the most underrated group from Motown, the Funk Brothers, on the beat. February 17th, 1968, the Cloud 9 album was released, and it reached number 4 on the Billboard Top 200 charts, along with the self-entitled song. This album gave us another hit titled Monterey Child Running Away, that reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts, and the album also went certified gold. Norman, he blended the sound of Motown and the psychedelic rock sound together in such a beautiful way that this had created a whole new sound, and he would call this sound psychedelic soul. September 23rd, 1969, the group's second album with Dennis was released, called Puzzle People. This album reached number 5 on the Billboard Top 200 charts, and this album also gave us a hit called I Can't Get Next to You. This song will reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. Now, during this time, Paul, he was dealing with sickle cells, and during this time era, there was rarely no medicine that can help, nor the medical research on this disease was very low at this point. With all this pain he was going through, plus the work schedule being so intense, Paul, he fell into a deep depression. By the late 60s, he developed an alcohol problem. Now, this was a red flag because Paul, he wasn't a drinker. And according to Otis, Paul, he never drank anything stronger than milk. With all this would play an effect on Paul's ability to perform the way he used to. In 1968, Otis, he hired Richard Street to sing Paul lines behind the curtain while Paul lip sings. Also during this time, Eddie Kendricks, he started to become more detached from the group, with David firing and his best friend Paul health on the decline. Eddie, he would often pick fights with Otis and Blue that sometimes became violent. He would often state that he preferred the old material from the old days rather than the new material that they was working with now. David would persuade Eddie to go solo. Plus, Eddie, he already felt that he no longer had a say-so when it comes to the group. Also, he felt that Motown was mishandling the group finances, and he was also felt that Motown was cheating the group out of this money. Eddie, he was the only one dedicated to getting David back into the group, but no one else budged. In 1970, Eddie, he would try to create a strike until Berry Gordy and the Motown staff was willing to go over the group's finances with accountants. Otis, he was completely against this idea, and the result of this only fueled the fire between the two even more. Now Eddie, he would finish the group album called Sky's the Limit. This album was released on April 22nd, 1971. This album will also reach number 16 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. Now, this album gave us Eddie's last lead song with the group called Just My Imagination. This song reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. What a way to go out. Now, after the departure of Eddie, Otis, he hired Ricky Owens from the Vibrations. But only after 2 dates, Otis, he fired Ricky for forgetting his lines. Now, Paul Doctor informs him that he couldn't continue to perform. So in May of 1971, Paul, he resigned and was officially replaced by Richard Street. Now, Paul, he was still getting paid at least 1/5 of the group's revenue. And also, he was still working with the group when he could as the group's advisor and choreographer. Paul, he also tried to pursue a solo career, and he recorded 2 songs that was never released. On August 17th, 1973, Paul, he died from a gunshot wound to the head. He was only 34 years old. For the life and death of Paul Williams, check out his story in the description box below. The group went a couple weeks in May with only 4 members: Otis, Blue, Dennis, and Richard. Late May of 1971, the group finally hired someone to replace Eddie Kendricks, Damon Harris, the 20-year-old from Baltimore. Born Otis Harris Jr. on July 17, 1950 in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, growing up, he was a big Temptation fan, idolizing Eddie Kendricks and studying every move of his. Him, along with some childhood friends, they had a group called the Young Temps. They would record 2 cover songs from the group called I've Been Good to You and Too Busy Thinking About My Baby. They would record these songs under the Isley Brothers label, T-Neck Records. Now, Motown, they would file a lawsuit against T-Neck Records for the use of the group's name. So they would rename the groups the Young Vidals. One of the cover songs had reached number 46 on the R&B charts. The group, they would record 2 more singles called In My Opinion and I'm Gonna Wait For You. The group would break up because Damon, he felt that college was more important than pursuing a singing career. April of 1971, a friend of Damon's convinced him to audition for the group since they was hosting them nearby in Washington, D.C. Now Damon, he had an audition in front of Dennis, Blue, and Richard. He can only see Otis if the group approved of his performance. Now Otis, he was hesitant to hire him since he was so young. But Damon's childhood dream was to be a Temptation. He idolized Eddie Kendricks and studied every move of his. And now, he's a member of that very same group, replacing his idol. Ironic, right? On October 17th, 1971, the group would release the song Superstar. Now this was the first diss song ever between friends. On January 11th, 1972, the album Solid Rock had reached number 24 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and number 1 on the top R&B albums charts. On September 28th, 1972, the group would release a song, Papa Was a Rolling Stone. Now this song reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 5 on the R&B charts. And this song would go on to be certified gold. And also, you can say that this song is the group's biggest song, like ever. A fun fact, this song was originally for the Motown group, The Undisputed Truth. They would record the song on May 9th, 1972, where they recorded a 3-minute and 28-second version. Now Norman, he wanted to add a different sound to the song, so he would go back and play with the instrumental and give this song to the Temptations, and he would have the group record a 12-minute version. This song will win the group's second Grammy Award. Now Norman and Beretta Strong, they will win a Grammy for songwriting. After the success of the song, Norman, he started working with Beretta, and he started working on his own. His first song on his own was called Masterpiece, that reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. This will lead into the self-entitled album Masterpiece, that reached number 7 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and number 1 on the top R&B albums. Around this time, tensions between the group and Norman began to rise, with the long version of Papa Was a Rolling Stone and the opening verse to that song that Dennis took disrespect to. Plus, Norman began showing up late, and he kept wanting to make songs that had long instrumentals in the beginning, and the group was completely against that. The group, they wanted to change producers, and they really wanted to change this due to the decline in sales from the group. The last album that was produced by Norman was called 1990. This reached number 19 on the Billboard Top 200 charts, and this album only had one hit that was called Let Your Hair Down, that reached number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. Now Norman, he left Motown and created his own record label in 1975 called Richfield Records. He would take the Undisputed Truth, Willie Hutch, and the group Rolls Royce with him. In 1976, Norman, he wrote Rolls Royce's biggest hit, called Car Wash. Now this song went number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. And this song was also made for the 1976 film Car Wash that starred Richard Pryor. Berry Gordy will assign Jeffrey Bowen as the group new producer. So on January 19, 1975, his first LP titled A Song For You was released. This album reached number 13 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. And the album also gave us 3 hits, with Shaky Grounds that reached number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts, along with Happy People that reached number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 1 on the R&B charts and number 11 on the disco charts, and Glass House that reached number 37 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 9 on the R&B charts. Glass House was the last song of the group that reached the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. Now during the recording of the album A Song For You, Otis, he fired Damon Harris due to poor behavior and work habits. He would replace him with Glenn Leonard for Washington DC, who was a member of the Unifix. The group, they would go on to release 3 more albums. Now these albums was House Party, that was released on November 4th, 1975. This album reached number 40 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and number 11 on the top R&B albums. This album also had one hit called Keep Holding On that reached number 54 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and number 3 on the R&B charts. Wings of Love that was released on March 10th, 1976 that reached number 29 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. The Temptations Do the Temptations that was released on August 16th, 1976. Now this album didn't chart at all. During the recording of the album Wings of Love, a couple of songs you can hear Dennis' voice more than the group's. Otis, he didn't like this, so he would go to Motown and accuse them of inattention, which was the lack of attention shown during the production of this album. He blamed this for the reason why the group wasn't doing good in sales. So after the album, The Temptations Do the Temptations, Dennis, he was fired and replaced with Louis Price. Now the group, they would leave Motown and sign to Atlantic Records. And after 4 years with Atlantic and 2 albums with no success, Atlantic, they decided to drop the group from the label. In 1980, the Temptations, they were signed back to Motown. After the group signed back to Motown, Louis Price, he left and joined the Drifters. Dennis Edwards, he tried his hands at his first attempt in a solo career, but it wasn't successful. So Dennis, he would rejoin the group just in time for Motown's biggest plan for the group. But before that would happen, Berry Gordy, he would have to take matters in his own hands, and he would write and produce the song Power that reached number 11 on the R&B charts but failed to reach the Billboard Hot 100 charts. Just when people started to count the Temptations out, they always tend to have something up their sleeve. And this thing will be none other than Rick James and the reunion tour. Thanks to all my subscribers for watching, and those that's not a subscriber, thank you as well. If you like what you see and would like to see more, check out a few more videos. And until then, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.